Welcome to Sewing Out Loud, the official podcast of ZD Sewing Studio. Here are your hosts, ZD and Mallory.
Sewing Out Loud. Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Mallory Donahue.
And I'm ZD Donahue.
And we're having a really hard time narrowing down the topic.
I was just told this is not a rehearsal.
I said this is not a rehearsal.
So I have to get my act together. You give me a topic and we'll see if I know anything about it.
Let's just start talking about this. I'll frame it this way, and then we can record another episode later if it doesn't cover what we want to cover. Fashion and making your own clothes, there's so much to talk about with this. Okay, so we've just recorded and probably released an episode on sewing classes and garment sewing. And so that's kind of where my brain is right now. We are in the Midwest. We're in the middle of the country.
Right. In fact, at one time, Peoria was considered the demographic middle of the United States. And how far is that from us? Less than 200 miles?
Right.
Yeah.
So we're like in the very middle of the U.S.
We're in the middle of Missouri.
Right.
Dead smack, like between St. Louis and Kansas City.
Yes. And what this does, why I'm mentioning this, is it makes it really hard for us to get nice garment sewing fabric around here.
Well, it does. Things tend to flow in from the coast.
Right. And so we were a few years ago, we were having like all this internal sort of conflict. We like sewing garments, but we were like, people aren't wanting to pay for a garment class.
Right.
They're not wanting to come in.
Or invest the time.
Or invest the time. You know, people will say they want a fitting class, and then if the class is over $15,
or if I would say, well, that's three Saturdays in a row, or 3 Wednesday evenings. Oh, I can't do 3 Wednesday evenings. Well, you know,
all right. So we were having all this trouble, but like our store, is our store, and it needs to be sort of true to us, And so finally, we were like, we're just gonna order in some fabrics for the classes we want to teach.
Show people what we can do.
And tell people if they have fabric already or they're buying it somewhere else. I mean, literally, it's this much of a fabric desert that we would have to say, you have to show it to us first before we'll let you sew the garment with it. And this wasn't because we're being snobs. It's because people would bring in like a quilting cotton to make a blazer.
Right. Well, and we want them to be successful.
Yes, right. And
it's about them being successful, not even about us selling them the fabric.
No, exactly. They needed to be successful. You can't make everything out of what was available at the fabric stores.
Well, you can make it. It's just, will you like it when it's finished? Probably not.
So we were having all this.
Do you want to look like a couch? Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. We were having all these problems. And so we started, we're like, screw it. We're doing it. We're just going to teach these classes. And now there's been a big resurgence in all these indie pattern companies, and all of these people blogging about making their own clothes. And I think this has really helped sort of people realize, like, making your own clothes is possible, and then it can be enjoyable.
It's also probable.
Yeah,
yes.
Right. I think maybe 5 years ago, the sewing world was like so focused on quilting that there wasn't even. I mean, people thought we were crazy in our store for teaching the t-shirt class. Do you remember that?
Yes, and the other thing that honestly has happened is clothes are actually easier to sew. When I started sewing, things were very fitted. We only had a very narrow types of fabric to choose from.
Right.
I mean, a wool was a wool was a wool.
Right.
You didn't even have blends hardly in those days. Or if it was, or if you did have some polyester, oh my gosh. Heaven help you. It looked slick after you ironed it or whatever. So in some ways, clothes are easier to sew because they're not always so fitted, or fabrics can be a little bit more forgiving.
So we have a more diversity in fabric types, and we also have more diversity in silhouettes.
Right
now, you think like sort
Absolutely.
of obviously. Well, in I don't know how much we're going to get into like environmental social impact of clothing manufacturing, but things turn over so fast now that you see past decades roll by in 1 year. It's like,
it's just like going someplace to buy, I don't know, or you go into a garment store, or maybe more of a box store like a Target or a Myers or what else is out there, I don't know, but Walmart. You go in and you buy this T-shirt
Right.
And you're like, I really like this T-shirt. It fits really well. And you go back next week and it's gone.
Right.
They don't have it anymore.
Mhm.
Its life has been spent.
Right.
So because of why is the question. My reason why is marketing.
Right.
Because it's telling you, if you see it and you like it, you better buy it now. Maybe you better buy 15 of them.
Well, and speaking of Walmart, and I don't mean to make any like moral judgments about all these stores or anything at the moment without statistics to back me up. I haven't done all my writing down of these things, but we had a big problem, I think about 6 or 7 years ago, convincing people to come to T-shirt class.
Right, because they could buy our
said-
T-shirt for
No,
$5 or $7.
They would just say it to
right.
our face, guys. They would be like, I can buy a T-shirt for $8. And I don't know if it's the internet and people become becoming
Right.
more connected, that I can see the more like-minded people out there.
Right.
We had to really like double down real hard
Well,
and say,
and-
you
right.
can get this T-shirt, you can pay for the class, pay for the fabric, and get a T-shirt that fits you like a more expensive T-shirt.
Right. I would say, do
or-
you want a $5 T-shirt or an $80 T-shirt that you can make and we would wear them and we would we were on a mission.
Mhm.
This is what a T-shirt looks like when it fits you.
Right.
And we got a couple of people. I'm thinking of Janet, like. Just
Yeah.
went crazy.
Yeah.
We fitted her with a T-shirt.
She's got her T-shirt
We
pattern,
drafted
man.
her T-shirt pattern. And I mean, she went crazy with it, and she looks good. And we got her in a new bra. And I mean, she,
Well, and
mission accomplished there.
you know what I never heard during this whole time was you can buy a blanket at Walmart for $10.
I know.
I
And
was
you-
like,
and you think about, or a bedspread, or
Yeah,
a comforter,
I
and
felt
you
a
think
little-
about what people buy, spend on
and
quilts.
people were saying it at the sewing conventions.
Right.
No one wants to make clothes because you can buy them, and I'm like, hello, you can buy blankets too.
You can buy everything.
But like
Right.
I would never say to someone who spent a bunch of time on a quilt, you made that thing and I could buy it at Walmart. I'd never say that,
No.
because you can't.
Right.
They made it.
That's
they put
right.
their heart into
Now,
it.
the one thing that has been said in our shop is Mallory showed her jeans
Yeah.
in a club setting where people had come and people were showing off their stuff, and someone had just shown off a pretty gorgeous quilt, apparently,
Yeah.
that was fairly complex and a group project. Am I correct?
Well, the quilt wasn't done yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But a complex and
Yes.
group project, okay. And everyone oohed and awed and thought it was great. And then Mallory showed her jeans and everybody sort of oohed and awed, and they said, and then the next question was, well, how long did it take you to make those?
Right.
And Mallory said, what?
I don't know, like
Right.
15 hours
Right.
maybe or
But
something.
the woman who made the quilt,
Yeah.
who was very astute, said, yes, but it took me this many hours. And,
Well, I said to her,
right.
I said,
Right.
Jeannie's still making this quilt.
That's right.
And the way she was timing it out, and this isn't bad. It's just like this is the way it was going. They were making a few blocks a month.
Right, right.
They weren't spending every spare minute
Right.
making this quilt like I was making my jeans. And I said, we also. She said when she finished the sentence
she
with me, she
said,
said, "What we want to sew,
what we
you
want
know?
to sew. A pair of jeans pretty much doesn't take as long as a quilt.
Probably not.
Now, you
Depending
do
on
have
the quilt,
and
you
do-
know.
now a quilt, maybe you can just buy the pattern and
Right.
you don't have to fit it.
Yep.
And maybe you have to fit the jeans, and that takes a little bit,
Right.
of a different type of skill.
Mhm.
But we do what we want. We do it. But the other thing too is if we do it once and it turns out really well, and I have this problem, we will make it again and again and
Right.
again.
Right.
I made a particular type of pant, sort of a pajama-y type, loose flowing
Mhm.
pant for myself this year for a couple of reasons. They were in style.
Right.
And the other reason is I had some surgery on my leg, and I had a huge bandage I had to wear. In fact, it was out of proportion to the actual size of the wound. But I just didn't want to explain to everybody why I had this big, ugly, wrap on my leg all the time. So and then I really liked him, and I thought I was looking cute, and they were easy. So I have all of these pants now. I have no tops, but I
You have
have
all
a
these
lot of pants.
But I think it's so funny that we're seeing all these popular, the fact that there are independent pattern designers who are making
Right.
a living
Right.
making garment sewing patterns. This is such a contrast to not very long ago
Right.
when we would have to, we would get sniggered at
absolutely.
By customers and by fellow machine dealers,
Right.
Et cetera, when we said that we were going to, do these things. And I don't think any type of sewing should be disrespected, but some people would say in classes, well, garment sewers are cheap. And I'm like,
Right.
well, there are all sorts of people who are cheap or what,
I can tell you about some cheap quilters.
Yeah, they're cheap quilters, they're cheap garment sewers. They're all, and
Right.
is it, what's cheap mean? What do you mean? But I'm like, no one's sewing their clothes to really, technically save a lot of money right now necessarily, I guess.
Particularly impress anyone but themselves.
Right. But
I don't think we should need other people telling us it's okay.
Right.
The best thing in the world is when somebody says to me, and this has happened just recently, "Oh, I love your shirt." Okay, I was in a class and I was wearing my rash guards, right? And everybody kept complimenting me on what I was wearing to class. I didn't say anything till like the next to the last class, and this girl said, every girl, woman, whatever she was, she was 40 years my junior. She says, "You always wear such cute stuff, and it seems to be, you look good in it." And I said, "Well, I make them."
Right.
And the whole class freaked. I planned it. I mean, she so hit my cue because everybody would say, "That is, I love that."
So
top.
no one needs to write in and say, "Well, ZD's just an attention seeker." 'Cause
Right.
we already know. It's okay.
but I did. I totally let them compliment me on these
Right.
things and didn't say, "Oh, I made it."
Right.
Because for one reason, I wanted to know, I guess I wanted to hear the compliments instead of, if people know you sew, the first thing they say to you is, "Did you make that?"
Right.
Instead
Right.
of, "That's really cute," or "That looks good on you," or
Right.
they'll go, "Did you make that?" And you don't know what that means.
Right.
That's an arbitrary, not compliment. It's
Right.
not a compliment. It's sort of an arbitrary, and is there judgment in there?
Right.
Did you
So
make that?
it is sometimes nice to just get a, "That's cute." Okay,
Right,
and not
right.
have to. Not
But
have to
like
worry
I
about
said,
it.
I when it started, I was like, I'm not going to tell people I'm making these. I'm going to wait and see because, everybody's coming in with their little outfits on, and I'll come in with my little outfit on, and we'll see how this rolls out.
I think maybe the resurgence in garment sewing has a lot to do with the Great Recession, though, and
Yeah.
and a lot more sort of attention being paid to where things are made and how they're made.
That might be true.
I think that we're, it's election season. I don't know how far out this podcast is, but man, I can't wait for it to be over.
Well, it'll be election season again. Might not be the or the presidential, but
whatever.
Season.
So there's a lot of talk about going on about like American jobs.
And there are a lot of really jean manufacturers now. They're doing this at home.
Right. So there's a lot of this talk about where things are made and and there's this big, I don't want to call it like a disconnect, but there's a big, people aren't putting these two things together. How much things cost, where they're made, and where jobs are.
Right.
You need to think about all of these things and make whatever decisions you wish to make. I'm not, going to necessarily like say, "Oh, well, you can only buy things made in the US or because that's."
Well, then you would never buy a sewing machine.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and that's
none of them are made here, everybody.
That's not how the world is working anymore.
No, it should be a world market.
That's not how things are working. But people will simultaneously complain about jobs, maybe being sent elsewhere, but then also complain about the price of something.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, we've been conditioned to get really excited when we find a cheap product.
Right.
I got a good deal. I this and that. And that's marketing.
That's right.
You just should feel smart by shopping in this store.
Right.
You see that in commercials for all sorts of stores. I went here and I'm just a smart person for even being here because they have the best prices.
We're definitely qualified to make all of these statements because we are the biggest consumers on earth.
Right.
We consume a lot more than any other nation in any other area.
China might be getting there, though.
You
Well,
think-
maybe per capita, because I know China's
yeah.
much more popular.
Right. I know. I'm
course,
talking
but,
about
you
per
know,
capita. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of countries where you see the walk-in closets that we have in our homes to accommodate our wardrobes,
Right.
and we're still buying.
And so when people do decide to make their own clothing, they're able to know it's ethically made if they're concerned about labor practices. They can source their fabric, try to know where it's made. You know, they can make high quality things that will last them longer. This has environmental repercussions.
Impact in which way?
Impacts. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. You know, there's all, or when you mend something or when you buy whatever, you know. And I don't think that these things are things to take into account just so you can have some kind of moral high ground, because that really bugs me. But they are something that you can think about. And I think that that's what has made you're making your own T-shirt, like, it's not so crazy anymore.
Well,
I don't hear the
and in making it
Mhm.
and sourcing it and all of those things you have to do makes you understand the value of sewing.
right,
Okay, just like the value of making a meal.
right.
I have to plan it. I have to go buy the groceries. You know, I have to know where they are. I'm trying to get them at the best cost. I'm trying to buy local, whatever. I have to know how many people I'm cooking for. Am I
Whatever
gonna
you're
co-
doing, yeah.
Well, you know, sewing is the same thing, just like all of that.
Well, and then there's a lot of marketing that you have to deal with too.
Marketing that honestly you should just let go away.
But it's
so hard.
It's so hard. I
It
was
is
just
hard. It's
looking.
very hard.
There was a show on about how the FDA is trying to regulate makeup, like the cosmetic industry. There's no regulation on it at all. Like, there's no standards right now by the FDA. Right?
Do you know? Well, that's getting off subject.
Okay, hold
I
on.
can't I can't do this. Right.
Let me finish. People don't like it when you talk over me.
I know. I'm thinking over you too, though.
Stop thinking
Yeah,
over
sorry,
me. Stop
sorry.
talking. Okay. So the FDA doesn't regulate cosmetics now, and people are concerned, but people are concerned about the burden this could place on small business. Da da da. You know, okay. Old situation,
Right.
right? You know, government regulation, safety, taxes, money, blah blah blah, right? But I even have a problem sometimes when things are labeled as like what does the label organic mean? I was
Not a
looking,
whole lot.
Right. I was like, well, I mean, I guess I am concerned about the makeup. I'm like, what can I get that's like the least environmental impact? I was just reading this article on how mica is mined, and that's like the sparkly
Mhm.
stuff in your
Yep.
eyeshadow, and little children are doing it. And I'm like, oh gosh. Well, poor me. I'm having to decide what kind of eyeshadow to
color?
buy. Yeah, exactly. You know, I don't mean to complain, but then there's a lot of marketing about that. You know, about this is organic or this is fair trade or da 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 da. But sometimes those words they might not mean anything. And so that's the same. I think that's a similar thing of what's going on with clothing and why it's almost more quote unquote acceptable to kind of take this into your own hands.
Or
fashionable or popular or
acceptable,
something you can talk
fashionable.
about. I buy these fair trade things. I buy these organic things. It's like, oh, well, maybe only the super rich can afford to.
Well, and that's
buy
true.
such things,
It might
like-
be more expensive.
Right. Not
It
everybody.
absolutely might be more.
You know, sewing.
If you're
and-
closing six kids for, school, the most important thing might be the price of those
That's right.
T-shirts.
and sewing.
And you know what? That's okay too.
Sewing's our luxury. I mean, sewing in this country, just how our society is a bit of a luxury. You know,
It is.
What machines cost and what fabric costs
And time.
and we're all supposed to be in 2-income households and
Right.
all that jazz. So it's nobody's main job to just sew clothes for their family.
Sewing is definitely a hobby
Right.
and no longer what we consider a household skill, except my husband thinks it's a household skill.
Right, except
or
yeah.
a boat cover skill or whatever we want to call that. Or, oh, look, they made these, bike shorts like this. Can you fix this?
Right.
What else can be done so I don't have a drawstring or whatever? So, we've loved the fact, we've totally enjoyed the skills that I have gotten with sewing.
And we're enjoying this resurgence in the garment making. We want to use our experience in having made these things to help people not have to go through maybe so much experimentation if it's not their main job.
And the other thing is you can make those clothes, when the clothes fit better, they feel better. When they feel better, they look better. I mean, you can't, that's a circle.
Right.
You can't do one without the other. I mean, if it's made, you're making it out of the fabric you need it. I mean, how many times have I made the same pair of pants, basically, but they're different fabric?
Right.
For, because I wanted them to look like this or feel like this or have this much warmth or have this much ventilation or whatever. So, we not only alter it in the sense to fit it, but we alter it to our needs.
Right. Well, I think that it's just interesting to observe how much more popular this has gotten, how much we're able to teach garment classes nowadays.
Right.
When we were literally scorned for doing so.
Well, yeah, and what is the scorn and disrespectful stuff about?
I am remembering, I'm having these
visual,
what
is that?
I'm having these visual memories of being in the former location of the
well,
shop.
I think the other,
and I'm seeing it right now. I'm seeing these people go, oh, and I'm like, huh.
Yeah, and I think, a small aspect of this also is there were days when people had to sew during depressions or whatever, and we addressed this in one of our podcasts about my mother, and my mother had a very negative outlook towards sewing because she grew up in the same fabric for every, garment she had because they would buy a bolt. That was the best way. And it didn't fit.
Well, and
when she finally got into ready-made clothing, she was amazed that something looked the way it did. It was more attractive than what had been sewn for her. Now, there were people sewing
and doing a better job.
Doing a better job. But what I'm saying is when it was a necessity, maybe people weren't always as skilled as they could, or as artistic or whatever I want to say.
It has a lot to do with status symbols, I think. Okay, so it used to be a status symbol to, get your clothes made and use lots of fabric, to make those skirts and need a dresser and, wear a corset, And then it was a status symbol that you could afford the ready-to-wear.
Right.
And then it was a status symbol to buy frozen dinners and have a microwave.
And my mother told me I was born in 1953.
Uh-huh.
My brother was born in 1944. She breastfed my brother.
Uh-huh.
But in 1953, the doctor said, oh, you want formula because you know what's in it.
Right.
And the other thing my mother said, she says, it was very fashionable. Only the poor people breastfed.
That's what an article of a parenting book I read. She said that someone told her mother, that's only something poor immigrants do.
Yeah.
And now we have this culture that can sometimes shame women who use formula.
Well,
and so we've got this backswing,
I think what it is everybody wants to shame everybody for some reason to make them feel better. I don't know.
Or growing your own food.
Right.
Okay. Now it's very fashionable. And what are you doing if you don't have a vegetable garden for your kid to play in?
Well, you might be working a lot.
You might be working. You might be in a place that doesn't have a yard. I don't know. I think that we all use our skills to create, back up. I think we should all use our skills to create a better place in the world somehow. And it doesn't always mean everybody can do it the same way you can.
That's right. It doesn't mean you always need to criticize someone for their choices. You don't know why they made their choices.
And I think that is big time on the internet with comment culture right now. People are...
I don't use paper plates.
Yeah.
Because I don't like them.
Right.
It has nothing to do with saving a tree. Now, maybe if I did like paper plates, I'd think about if I should save a tree or not, but I just don't like them.
But sometimes I'll think, oh, this is a good thing I'll share with people about preventing waste of, fabric. And I want to present this to people in a way that says, hey, this can help because this is a concern of mine, but I'm certainly not pretending like I'm not like saving all the water that I don't use and then do, there's lots of other things that I probably do.
You don't save your gray water to water your lawn.
Yeah, to water my garden.
Right.
There's a drain that a filter I have to clean on my washing machine and water comes out. And I thought, oh, like if I was being really good, like
I
I'd save this
know.
water and do this. And I was like, okay, well, we're all on our own journey here.
Yes.
Even if you make your clothes, doesn't mean you have to have a 100% handmade wardrobe.
It doesn't mean you have to use cloth diapers.
Right. It
Doesn't mean you
don't-
have to use paper diapers.
you don't
There's an
have
argument
to-
on both sides.
You don't have to breastfeed. You don't have to do this. You don't have to whatever, but I think that it's
We do need to think about, are we doing the best thing for the world, for ourselves, for everybody around
Right.
us? How on earth did that come out of fashion?
well, I think
garment
there's
sewing?
a lot of moral posturing around.
Well, and I know that when that's one reason I don't even let people know I sewed my shirt,
Mm-hmm.
because I think part of that, not only that I wanted to shock them all in the end, was that I didn't want them looking at everything I wore
Yeah.
and critiquing it beyond, why would she pick that fabric to
Uh-huh.
go together? Because believe me, I don't pick the same fabrics to go together that are on the market,
Right.
do I, Mallory?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what are your thoughts on the resurgence in garment sewing after we obviously went into?
I hope you had a long walk when you're
I
listening to
hope
this
you
or whatever.
enjoyed this. The podcasts are getting longer. So let us know what you think. We're ZD's Sewing Studio on Instagram. My email address is mallory@sewhere.com. And let us know what you think, and have a good time doing whatever you do while you're listening to a really long podcast now.
So long and so amazingly.
Thanks for listening to Sewing Out Loud. For even more expert sewing advice, visit sewhere.com.